All right, welcome to Chapter 7, where we're going to talk about the role of persuasion in integrated marketing communications. All right, so our objectives for this chapter explain the nature and role of attitudes in marketing communication, different hierarchy of effects models, and under what conditions attitudes should predict behavior. Using several examples to describe the role of persuasion in marketing communication, explain the tools of influence from the marketing communicator's perspective, and then discuss the 5 important factors of persuasion: message, strength, peripheral clues, receiver involvement, receiver initial position, and communication modality. All right, then we're going to take a look at the ELM, which is the elaboration likelihood model, including customer motivation, ability, and opportunity to process the message, the central and peripheral routes to persuasion, and the implications of the ELM for marketing communication. Describe practical marketing communications efforts that can enhance consumer motivation, ability, and opportunity to process the message. And then explain the theory of reasoned action and basic preference and behavior change strategies. All right, so can we be persuaded to overcome bad habits? The answer is yes, but you have to do it in a correct way. And that's really what we're going to get into in this chapter. How do you persuade people while being ethical to either go away from something bad, like smoking or texting and driving, things of that nature, as a public good and service, or how can you induce people to buy? That's what we're trying to look at. All right, so in the book it talks about Tropicana and how they came up with a new formula and how they were portraying that to their consumers. And what they were focusing on was that their new brand had calcium, and so it was fortified with calcium. It's something that people had not associated with orange juice before. And so they started that. Every other orange juice provider said, that's a really good idea, and we could easily add that into our formulation without negatively impacting our quality or taste. And so they did. So one company started the process, and another company picks it up. So why did they add it? Why did they add calcium? Did it add any actual value to the consumer? Well, that's where the role of persuasion comes in. Your job as a marketing communication person is to establish the value. It's to persuade people that this is something that actually matters for you. So, for instance, calcium. I don't think you guys probably are very concerned about calcium, but what if you are? What if it's something that your doctor says you need to increase your uptake in calcium for whatever reasons? Maybe it's a health reason. Well, now you're invested in that. Okay, so you would be actively looking at something that has higher rates of calcium, so you wouldn't have to radically change your life. You can just change some of the products. Okay, well, the role of persuasion is getting people to understand that what you are trying to convey to them is important. So for instance, if you're trying to get people to stop texting and driving, right? You need to persuade them that there's a reason for it. So persuasion is very important when it comes to getting people to purchase your products or adapting a value like not smoking is very important. All right, so when we talk about attitude, what we're talking about is this enduring positive or negative feeling towards either person, an object, or an issue, right? So what you're looking at is not a bad attitude or good attitude. It's how do you feel about something, the person, the object, the issue, whatever it is. You have a you have a perception of these products. Okay, is it good or bad, and to what degree is it a good or a bad? Okay, that is your attitude. And that's what we're trying to adjust in a lot of cases when we're actually marketing to people. Because if you believe, for instance, that a different brand of laundry detergent is better, I have to adjust your perception so that you would actually give my laundry detergent a chance. Okay, so we have to we have to adjust your attitude so that we can actually convert you from a non-customer into a customer. All right, so there's 3 parts that make up an attitude. One is cognitive. This is your knowledge, your thoughts, and your beliefs about something. Then you have your affective. These are your feelings or your evaluation. And then the cognitive. These are your behavioral intentions. This means, am I actually going to buy it or use it or conform to it? Okay. So those are your 3 points. So, if we take it back to, the texting and driving thing, okay, what is your cognitive attitude towards texting and driving? Okay. You should know that it's bad, right? Because you have decreased capacity to actually see what's going on. What are your thoughts about it? Okay, is it something that it's okay to do in a rural environment, but not in the city? What are your beliefs personally about something like that? That all makes up your cognitive load, your attitude. Affective. How do you feel about texting and driving? What's your evaluation of it? Right? Is it really a bad thing? Is it a bad thing for certain people and not others? And then your cognitive behavior. Okay, so you might know that it's not good to do it. You might believe it's not good to do it. You might feel that it's the wrong thing to do, and overall you shouldn't. But at the end of the day, are you going to text and drive? Okay, so that's where the cognitive behavior intention, the behavior intentions come in. Now we look at higher of effect models. So learning in high involvement hierarchy. So you have 2 different kinds of hierarchies we're going to look at. You have high involvement and a low involvement. In a high involvement, you're looking at cognitive leads to effect, leads to conation. In a low involvement, you're looking at cognition leading to conation, leading to effect. So there's 2 different pathways depending on the involvement in that idea, in that product, whatever we're actually talking about. Okay. All right. So why attitudes matter is because we can actually predict behavior based on those attitudes. So we're looking at measurement, specificity, considerations. Tact is how it breaks down. So we're looking at target, action, context, and time. Target being the target of the behavior. Action is the specific action, the context in which the behavior occurs, and then the time in which it occurs. And then we also have direct versus indirect experience. So what this really breaks down to is, if I was to poll people and I asked them, what is your take on XYZ product? Okay. You first have to ask them, do you have any experience with this? Because that experience is going to impact your attitude towards that product. So if I was to introduce you to, say, the book uses, I think, pretzels. If I were to introduce you to pretzels, and there's a new bag of pretzels and we're trying to see how it works, or what people's thoughts are on it. If you've already had it, it's going to color it. So your experience is important. Your experience actually helps shape your attitude, and you need to take that into consideration as you are not only positioning a product, or maybe repositioning. Because if they had a bad experience with your product before, it's going to take a lot more persuasion to get them to come back and try it again. Whereas if it's something brand new to them, they might try it simply because, why not? It's something new. So their experience is an issue. It could either be a positive or a negative thing. All right, so this is tact in action. If you say something kind of ill-defined, like, what's your attitude towards getting an MBA? It's probably going to be, it's probably something I should do. It's not very specific, and it's not time-bound, and it's not, it's just kind of out there. But if you change that statement, what's my attitude towards getting an MBA at this university after graduation is, okay, the more specific you end up being, the better the better correlation to results you're going to have. So if you say something, vague, you're going to get vague, commitment to it. But the more you actually make it more concrete, the easier it is to get people to agree to something, right? So if your intention of asking this question is to get people enrolled in the MBA program, okay, you wouldn't want to ask, what's your attitude towards getting an MBA? No, because that doesn't necessarily do you any good. Because they might have an intention, but they might not have an intention at your university. So if you instead just expand that and say, what are you thinking about getting an MBA right after you graduate in the spring? Be a great time to roll into the next thing. It's a lot easier to make that next case and to make that persuasion so that they actually consider your university for that next step. All right, so these are the 6 tools of persuasion that we're going to jump into here in the next couple slides. All right, so I like these tools of persuasion simply because I've used them for so long. If you don't know, my background is actually in sales. I've sold a lot of different types of products. Most recently was insurance. And so I use these because they're effective. So here's the 6. And I'll give you an example of how I actually have used these in real life situations. Reciprocation. So the idea here is samples, gifts, sincerity, things of that nature. And how I would use it is very simple, right? You just start out being nice. You honestly, if you treat people with respect, they are much more likely to treat you with respect, right? So when I would introduce myself to somebody, right, I would figure out the pronunciation of their last name, and I'll call them by that, right? And it was always sir and ma'am, and the reason for it is because if you start off on a good foot with people and showing them respect, they're more likely to reciprocate that and show you respect as well. Commitment and consistency. Commit to something. This is one of the best things about sales, especially when it comes to insurance, is because once I've sold the product to you, the policy in this case, it doesn't matter if you have a slightly better product from another salesperson. You've already committed to me. So one of the hardest things to actually do was to convince people that they made a bad choice previously, right? So to convince them, you've been with State Farm for 20 years, but honestly, you've been wasting your money from 20 years, makes them feel bad because they were duped, right? That's not something that you want them to do because that puts them in a more defensive position. So you want to, when you're talking about committing, is you're wanting them to commit to you. One of the ways that I would do this is in Minnesota, for instance, you have 3 days to look over any contract, and you can rescind it for whatever reason. You just say, I don't want to do this, and as long as you notify in writing, you can cancel the contract. And so what I would do is sometimes people would say, I need to think about this before I make a decision. And I'd say, I totally understand. I totally agree. Let's just get it done. We'll write up the contract. We'll put it in. You still have 3 days to look it over, to consider it. And you actually have 30 days to get your money back. So if you're not concerned at all, if you're on the fence, let's just get the paperwork done. Since I'm here, you're here, we can get this done. And then you can, if you decide down the road it's not for you, it's cancelable. And what I found, if I did that, about 80% of people would actually keep the contract. They were on the fence before. If I would have come back, they probably would have said no. But because they already had it in place, they kept to it. Social proof. What I did for another company is I sold a membership to a lobby group. And in the back of my book, I used to have carry a binder like this, right? And in the back of the book, I would have business cards that were glued to a sheet. So what ended up happening, it looked really nice. I would give my presentation, I'd get to the end, and I would talk about, how as business owners, there's strength in numbers. And so I would flip through these pages and show all of the different business owners in the area. And I'd ask them at the end, can your neighbors count on your support? And when I got that far, typically speaking, they said yes, and they bought. Liking. I don't think I'm exactly an attractive guy, so what I did was I dressed up, right? And what that does is that it conveys that same kind of symbol and status, right? So I looked nice, so people were more wanting to talk to me, right? Authority. How I did with authority was simple. I would use statistics backed by doctors or by nationally recognized groups to make my point. So it's not my numbers. This is what the American Cancer Society is saying about it. And then scarcity was one of my favorite ones. And what this would do is, if somebody was on the fence about buying or not buying a product, what I would do is I would actually take it away from them. And it's really interesting. What would I do when I'm saying take it away? I would be showing them a brochure, and they're like, well, we really need to think about this. And I would say, that's okay. You think about it all you want. I'm only here for a limited amount of time. But if you don't want to do this, then I'm going to save both you and me some time, because there's so many people I need to get to. I'm going to take no as an answer now. So I'm going to take back my material, and I'd reach over and I'd grab the brochure that they probably was right in front of them, or maybe in their hands. So it's fine. This is a decision that you're making for yourself. I got to take your no for an answer now, because I have to get on to the next customer. And it's amazing, because I was threatening to take away the opportunity to make a sale, to purchase a product. A lot of times the customer would say, no, I do want this, and let's just go ahead and do it. So these are different ways that you can actually use influence to get people to actually do something with it. All right, so there's 5 important persuasion factors, and these are message strength, peripheral cues, receiver involvement, receiver initial position, and communication modality. All right, so the first one is argument-based persuasion. So for instance, on this ad here, what it's trying to do is tell you that their spaghetti, their pasta sauce is healthier than alternatives. Okay, so they're using an argument-based, and if you can zoom in, or you can see it in the book, it's better in the book, you can see some of the different things that they are actually portraying here, right? That it's a good source of omega-3, it's gluten-free, it's cholesterol-free, it's only got 330 milligrams of sodium, and it's a good source of vitamin A. Those are what they're positioning as. This makes us an actually healthy alternative. So the stronger your argument is there, the more that you will have an opportunity to make a decision, right? So for instance, if you had only a few of these things, then can you persuade people to your claim, that your claim is accurate, by saying that you're a healthier sauce than the alternatives, right? Probably not. So you want to have more information, because the more information you have, the stronger your argument becomes. The stronger your argument, the more likely you are to persuade somebody towards your cause or your product. All right. The other one that we're going to talk about is emotion-based persuasion and peripheral cues here. So what are you seeing here? The book says it pretty straightforward. You got 2 good-looking people. You got a man and a woman. And what are they doing? What are you picking up from this ad? It doesn't say a lot, right? But you can see it conveys all the message you need based on your peripheral cues. You got 2 attractive people. They're both sharing headphones, and they're listening to something. And Rosetta Stone is obviously a language education system. So what it's saying is that, through the use of using our software, you can Um, you can have a conversation, have an experience with somebody that's attractive. So that's the emotional appeal, right? This doing this thing, learning this language will make you more attractive to the opposite sex. So that's an emotion-based persuasion tactic. All right. So the receiver's initial position is significant because that's your baseline. Okay. So what happens is you're presented with a new argument, right? You have support arguments and counter arguments. So when you see something and you have, say, perception, either negative or positive about a brand or a product, and it has a support argument, this you should change to our pasta sauce because it's better for this, this, and this. Okay, you can use those arguments to add to your own knowledge and to say, yeah, that makes sense. Or you can actually start fighting with it and say, well, you know what? Just like the book was talking about, I actually have to have lower sodium content than that. So while you're saying that's a good thing, it's not actually a good thing for me. And then you have source bolstering and source derogation. So this all works together. So you're looking at where you're at, and does the sources actually help persuade me, or do they actually tear down? So this is where you're at. So what you're trying to do is, at the end of the day, persuasion is about moving people from where they're at to where you want them to be. Okay. Now, how do you do it? If the position is positive, then all it takes is a moderate or low credible source can be more effective than a high credible source. Now, what this means is simply this. Okay. When I was out selling insurance and I was competing against another product, because their initial position was favorable to that other company and unfavorable or neutral to me, I would have to show them significant evidence to overcome their position, right? Because they've already made a commitment. They're already over here with this company. Okay. In a lot of cases, if they were already had what I was selling, honestly, I'd just shift to a different product because I didn't really want to deal with it. Makes sense? Because you have to overcome, in a lot of cases, too much. Because people typically are skeptical of ads or even salesmen, in my case. So I used to have to rely on high credible sources, which is fine, which is what I wanted anyways, to overcome skepticism. But when they're already positioned negatively, it's much harder than if they're positive. If it's a positive interaction, well, yeah, I've heard of you. My brother has your product. It's a lot easier to make that sale because all of a sudden now you're in a better position, if that makes sense. So where the receiver is a huge determinant of your success. If it's negative, it's going to be an uphill battle. And if it's positive, then you don't need as much to get them persuaded to make that decision. All right, so we're going to talk about motivation, opportunity, and ability is the next piece here. And so what you have a message and how well that it's going to be taken by your prospective customer or whoever you're sending that message out to is going to rely on these three factors. Motivation really is how closely in alignment is your message with their own beliefs and their own needs. For instance, I used to sell cancer insurance that would pay out if they were going through cancer. And if I was talking to somebody that never had a negative experience with cancer, or their insurance paid for everything, there was never any out of pocket, they don't see a need for this product, right? And so I'd shift to something else, okay? Because the motivation, even if it's a good product, the motivation isn't there because it's not in alignment with their own needs, okay? And then the next is ability. Do they have the ability to actually process the message? This could be you're speaking too high above them, so this tends to happen with professionals where they know what they're talking about and they're used to talking to other people. So this could either be financial advisors or it could actually be doctors as well. This is common where they They're using jargon that normal people don't understand, right? So they can't process the message that the professional is trying to convey to them. And then the last one is opportunity. And what this refers to is do you have the ability to actually process that message? That's really what it ends up being about. So these are all important aspects of whether or not your message is actually going to be received, and it's going to impact conation. So that it's it for this first half, and I will come back for the second.